Welcome to the Accountants Connection webinar series sponsored by Your Business First, your partner in business. Hi everyone, Darren Xerri here, CEO and Principal Consultant of Your Business First. Today we have the pleasure of having Kerrie Salvatore, Co-founder and Director of Concise Super, presenting today on outsourcing SMSF administration compliance, what to consider when looking for an SMSF service provider. Kerrie and her husband and co-founder Fab understand that most sole practitioner or small accounting practices don't have the time, resources or capacity to do everything. They have found that accountants that outsource clients' SMSF administration compliance work are able to focus on the core expertise they provide to their clients, not to stress when their staff turnover, and they feel comfortable to take on more work. In this webinar, Kerrie will take you through the journey of outsourcing your SMSF administration compliance work, including the benefits of outsourcing, the questions you need to ask potential SMSF service providers, and common mistakes they see are made by accountants. Thank you to those who provided questions and discussion points when you register for the webinar. Kerrie will answer these during the presentation. If you have a question during the webinar, please feel free to click the Q&A button, enter your question, and we'll attempt to answer it accordingly and, of course, anonymously. So, Kerrie, welcome and thanks again for your time today.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks for having me today.
No problems. Thanks for your time. So tell us a bit more about Concise Super.
So Concise Super is an accounting practice and we provide SMSF services to SMSF trustee clients as well as accounting firms. We specialise in the area of administration, compliance and advice. And we set up the practice about 6 years ago because we felt that there was a need for sole practitioners needing the support in the area of SMSFs, which I'll cover today.
Great. All right. So let's get started, shall we? So what are you going to cover off today?
Okay. So we're going to cover why outsource in the first place, what questions to ask an SMSF service provider, benefits of outsourcing SMSFs, common SMSF administration mistakes made by trustees that we have seen, and common mistakes we see that accountants make during our onboarding process. Okay, so as a sole practitioner or part of a small accounting firm, can you relate to this picture? Sometimes feeling stressed, alone, unsupported, frustrated, and overworked. Balancing the pressures of legislation and industry changes, and most of all, answering to client pressures of expecting you to be an expert on everything. Time, debtors, and cash flow are always a worry for you too. Have you been asking yourself, is outsourcing an option for me? I've been in the industry for more than 20 years, and in my experience as an employed accountant and now running my own practice, I have found that there are 3 problems, also known as pain points, that accountants face in business. These problems are the cause of your frustrations and possibility as to why you would outsource. So the first one is lack of capacity. That is the lack of people power to do the work all the time to get the work done. Secondly, the lack of resources. This can be the particular skills the accountants lack or the team lacks to execute the work. It can also be a case where the business does not have the right infrastructure in place. For example, the applicable software or specialised knowledge needed in their business. Another reason may be the business has gone through a structure change, for example, a partnership split, or encountered staff turnover where the expert knowledge in the practice has been lost. The third problem is unexpected business growth, where there has been an introduction of new services and or an increase in clients and the business is not prepared for that growth. This problem links to the capacity and resource gap again. So as you can see, there can be a flow-on effect with these pain points where one can lead into the other. In our experience, when accounting firms approach us and share why they want to outsource, it's usually between 1 to 2 of these problems they are dealing with at the time that they want to solve. There are different areas in an accounting firm that the business owners can outsource, and as you might already be outsourcing some of these functions listed on the slide today. Today I'll be focusing on the specialised area of self-managed superannuation fund administration and compliance. When looking for an SMSF service provider, there are a range of questions you should ask to get a really good understanding of A, what to look for, and B, do they meet your business needs? Before we move into the types of questions to ask a prospective SMSF service provider, Darren, I thought I'd touch on the differences between outsourcing and offshoring.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that is one of the issues and that's come through the question. So it'd be great to focus on that now, Kerrie.
Okay, so according to the Tax Practitioners Board definitions, outsourcing is to obtain goods or a service by contract from an outside supplier, essentially entering into an arrangement with a third party to provide a specific process, function, service, or activity. Offshoring is the practice of basing some of a company's processes or services overseas. The business enters into an arrangement to transfer a process, function, service, or activity to a country, obviously other than Australia. There are also different levels of arrangements and business models that can occur depending on the level of control the business owners want to maintain. The points I'll be referring today is directed to outsourcing, but can be relevant to offshoring.
But as far as the Concise Super is concerned, you and your team, you don't offshore to overseas?
No, we don't offshore. Everything is done here in Melbourne.
Great.
Okay. So we'll go through 13 questions to ask or consider asking a prospective SMSF service provider. The first one is, what is the onboarding process and how long does it take? The last thing you want is a stressful onboarding process where you feel you're doing all the work with little results to get started. What are the terms of the agreement? Is the agreement in writing? Is the termination process simple or stressful? Make sure you read the agreement before you sign it so you are clear on all the terms and conditions. I know that point sounds quite simple, like to read the agreement, but generally when we're busy and just want to get things done, we just sign it and off you go, and then potentially read it later. Secondly, is there a minimum number of funds to get started? Is it 1, 50 or 100? Does the quota fit the number of funds you have in your business? If you have half a dozen or a dozen SMSFs, where do you fit? To support sole practitioners, we have a minimum of 1 fund to get started. We find the sole practitioners that have a handful of SMSFs sometimes get left behind, and that's why we support them regardless of the numbers they have. We also find that these sole practitioners end up growing their SMSF client base. As their business grows, it becomes a natural progression and their confidence increases to take on more SMSF work.
Great.
Yep. Do you have a dedicated accountant allocated to you? Are the accountants qualified to do the work? Are they CPA, CA or IPA members? How long have they been in the industry? Are they number crunchers or a great resource of knowledge? For example, a go-to person for what-if questions and scenarios. Do they have specialised knowledge and accreditation in SMSFs? Is the work delivered consistently? Are the work papers packaged in a simple review? What is the review process? How is the final package presented? We do find some firms like their financial statements package presented to their clients in a specific format. We're happy to format to their preferences. However, some providers may not be so accommodating. So that's a good point to clarify. The fourth question, are the auditors currently registered with ASIC? How long have they been using their current auditor? And when I say they, I mean the service provider. If you have a preferred auditor, will the provider liaise with that auditor? ASIC has a register for not only current registered auditors, but also banned and disqualified auditors. So it's worth checking ASIC's register before using a new auditor. The fifth question is, what is the turnaround time of a job? Do you have an internal expectation in your business for turnaround time? And does the provider fit within your expectations? If you have an urgent completion due date, how accommodating is the service provider to prioritise the job for you? How is the progress of the job communicated? How often are you being updated on the progress of each fund from start to finish? Are you following them up or receiving regular updates? So, Darren, what we do with our accounting firm clients, we send out a weekly workflow report with a status update of each job, and this provides them a snapshot of where the job is at, and the report is used in the internal workflow meetings.
So as far as that's concerned, and from a, I suppose, a due date or a deadline point of view, is it by negotiation in the sense? Is it by negotiation in the sense of, look, we can do this, or if we have to reprioritise, we may need to look at it again. So how do you work with clients who, or how do you work with accounting firms who are really, I suppose, not so much selfish, but demanding on when the work needs to be done by?
Yeah, so we have a general turnaround time of 2 weeks, and that's ensuring that all the information is being provided, and plus the audit time. However, if we have been notified by the firm to say, look, the client's coming in a couple of weeks because they're going overseas, can we fit this in to prioritise the job? Obviously, we can do that with enough notice. But if we're getting a call today and saying, well, the job needs to be finished tomorrow, but there's missing info that we're still waiting on.
Yeah, fair enough.
There's other issues to be considered, but we always try and accommodate as much as we can, ensuring that we can deliver those expectations to the client, because we do understand that they've got the outside pressures as well from the client.
So you're also saying that as far as the agreement's concerned with the SMS service provider, there should be some set deadlines or set turnaround times in that agreement, maybe for fund size.
Look, some do have that, and it's probably a good point to clarify with them as to what does that turnaround time mean? Is it from start to finish? Does it include, or does it mean like from receiving all the missing info?
Yeah.
Does it mean, from the time that it goes to audit? So there's a few points to clarify what the turnaround time means for each business.
Great.
Okay, so the next point, how is client personal information dealt with daily? This is a really important point. I recommend that the accounting firms check their accounting body guidelines, whether they need to disclose in the engagement letter that they are outsourcing client work to a third party. They should also clarify how the information is transferred between the firm and the provider. For example, is it via a secure portal? And do they have cybersecurity protection, secure backup and storage systems in place? The next point is, what is the fee structure? So here, what you need to do is confirm what the service package includes. So you understand what you're paying for. As you would know, no two accounting firms are alike, and neither are SMSF service providers. So when comparing their fees, compare apples with apples and not apples with oranges. Service providers' fees differ and charge in a range of ways. They can charge based on a number of transactions, percentage of assets, number of investments, an hourly rate, or a set fee. Ask if there are any potential add-ons so there are no surprises. What are the payment terms? Is the job invoiced on completion, weekly or monthly? Is there a 7, 14 or 30-day due date, and can the terms be negotiated? The next point is who owns a software license. Generally, the SMSF service provider owns the license, but this is an important question for firms that already have a software license or subscription and don't want to give it up. Is there an option here? We have a couple of clients that have their own license and wanted to maintain it when they came on board. It wasn't an issue for us because we use the same software and understood that they have already invested in the software, and maintaining a level of control in their business was an important factor for them. Okay, the next question is 10. Do they have professional indemnity insurance cover? Firstly, confirm that the service provider has professional indemnity insurance cover. And secondly, confirm your PI cover includes outsourcing. And if you need to provide a copy of the SMSF service provider's certificate of currency to your insurer. Can you interview their clients? What better way to get a good understanding is to interview their clients directly. Ask the provider to supply a couple of clients' contact details. Ask their clients questions like, how long have they been a client? How many funds they have? Do they have any frustrations? And what they are most happy about. The next point is, can you trial a couple of the funds? If the terms of agreement allow it, test the waters with providing 1 or 2 funds to the service provider. Monitor the process and communication and delivery of the service. This will give you a good opportunity to assess that what was promised is delivered. It's kind of like that, test before you buy, try before you buy.
Try before you buy.
Yeah. It will also give you an opportunity to clarify any concerns you may have. And once you're comfortable moving forward, then proceed to provide more work to the SMSF service provider. The last question is, what is the business culture like? You may not want to ask this question directly, but it is an important one to answer. If you're planning on having a long-term relationship with a third-party provider, you want to ensure that the relationship is a good fit and in line with your business culture. Culture can sometimes be difficult to quantify, see and touch. So clarify that the business and the team you are dealing with have the same values and morals as you. Start the relationship where all parties are on the same page, progressing into a long-term and trusting relationship. As you can see, I've just covered 13 questions for you to get a good understanding of how broad and specific they can get. But from these questions, it may spark further questions and a fruitful conversation with this SMSF service provider. In summary, keep in mind why you were wanting to outsource in the first place. That is, what problems do you want to solve and what type of relationship do you want to have with your SMSF service provider? Do you want someone that is just going to get the job done, that is, job in, job out? Or do you want a relationship with an SMSF specialist that is part of your team? We have trusted relationships with our accounting firm clients, and they know they can rely on us. So besides delivering the SMSF compliance and admin services, we also provide active support. The accountants can pick up the phone and say, hey, Kerrie and Fab, I have this client with this issue. What do we need to do? We'll provide the support they need, whether it is a straight yes, no answer with explanations around the super rules, or provide an email with links to the legislation and articles that will direct them to further information. Also, having a strong relationship with our auditor helps in some situations, especially when discussing scenarios before the fact or transaction occurs. We also provide recommendations at the end of the job that the accountants can bring up in their client meetings. At the end of the day, you want to ensure you are reaping the benefits when outsourcing.
That's great.
Okay, so we'll go through the benefits.
Before you do, Kerrie, just wanted to let everybody know that please feel free to have if there's any questions or queries that you have, please feel free to use the Q&A button and we'll attend to those queries and questions, and obviously we'll ask those questions to you anonymously. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. So the benefits of outsourcing SMSFs. What would these benefits look like for you? Imagine creating immediate capacity in your business so you can perform the functions and deliver the services you and your team are good at, and with the ability to do more. Or on the flip side, spend more time with the family or on outside interests, whether it is a hobby or different business ventures. Yeah. Utilize the resources and the SMSFs can get quite confusing when you're saying it quite a few times. So, utilize the resources and SMSF expertise available to you. That is, tap into their expert knowledge and support. The other benefit is to take the opportunity to be a proactive accountant to your clients. Imagine delivering a full SMSF service package. Imagine adding value to your clients by offering services that will help them with their problems and pain points. By taking the time to meet with them more often and asking how they are going in their business. As a result, your client relationships will prosper. Yep, next slide, Darren. So now I'm going to change the pace a little and we're going to move on to the SMSF documentations. Okay, so these are the common mistakes that trustees make in regards to their SMSF documentation. So when we receive a fund from an accounting firm for the first time, we do our own checks and balances to ensure the fund is compliant from an administration and compliance point of view. In order to do this, we'll ask for the setup documentation, the last lodged annual return, financial statements, member statements, and audit report. Over the years, we've found common administration mistakes that trustees make, and they usually occur when the fund is set up and not rectified after the setup process. The first one is that the trust deed is not signed and dated. So if it's not signed and dated, it doesn't exist. However, 9 times out of 10, there is at least one copy signed, and in the rush of setting up the fund, not all other copies are signed. The client thinks the accountant has the signed copy, the accountant thinks the client or the financial planner has the copy, and it can get confusing to locate. This is becoming more of an issue when ordering and providing electronic copies to the client to sign, and there is no follow-up process to ensure all documents are signed and filed. The second point is the trustee declaration form is witnessed by the other trustee or are unsigned or not even witnessed. This document must be completed within 21 days of establishing the fund and is generally included in the setup package. If the client is not being clearly directed on how and who should be signing and where, then it is most likely not going to be completed correctly. And this is a common one that we do. So if
it's not completed after 21 days, what happens?
Well, the form actually doesn't, it's an ATO form, but it doesn't actually get sent to the tax office. Yeah. It's just that the fund, the members or the trustees that are signing the declarations aren't being notified of all their responsibilities and obligations. So it's quite a lengthy documentation which highlights all their responsibilities. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The third point is that there is no documented investment strategy. An SMSF must have a documented investment strategy and it must be reviewed regularly. In our experience, we find that when some SMSFs are established, the investment strategy is generic and broad, and then over time the fund makes its investments, which doesn't coincide with the original document, and there has been no updated version of the investment strategy on hand. Darren, the ATO recently wrote to over 17,000 SMSF trustees and their auditors regarding their investment strategies. So this is a really important point to take note of. The tax office focus here was that these funds were holding 90% or more funds in one asset or a single asset class. They've put pressure on the trustees to review and update their investment strategy to ensure it reflects the fund's current position and strategy. The ATO is also notifying the auditors to request a copy during their audit process. So now, I think now's a good time for the accountants to ask their clients at least to review their investment strategy and, if needed, update it. The next point is incomplete, non-binding or binding death benefit nomination forms. Darren, David Gorman presented last month in your webinar series.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
And he talked about estate planning and covered some points and case studies regarding binding and non-binding death benefit nomination forms. If these forms are not completed correctly, the wishes of the deceased may not be carried out. So for those that missed David's presentation, he had a slide with a diagram where the accountant was the centre of the circle and other professionals like the bank, the financial planner, and the lawyer were in the outer circle. This depicted the importance of the accountant's relationship with the client, highlighting the responsibility of the accountant to direct the client to the right professional for the right support and advice. So the point I'm making here is that you're not expected to be a lawyer, but if it comes to your attention that binding death benefit nomination forms you have on file were incorrectly completed, then the client will thank you for directing them to see a lawyer and have them completed correctly and with the appropriate professional guidance.
Yeah, I think you're right, Kerrie. I think that from a client point of view, if a client ever needs advice or a referral or I suppose a contact, they always go to their accountants.
Yeah, definitely.
For that particular bit of information or advice. So it's probably up to the accountant to not also be knowledgeable, but also have the I suppose the resources and the referrals around him or her, so that they can refer to their client to them accordingly.
Yeah, and that is on the next slide. That is one of my recommendations. So where needed, direct the client to the professionals that the client actually needs that support in.
Yeah.
So I'll just go touch on the recommendations from the top of the slide. So even if the fund has been in operation for a number of years, I recommend that you conduct your own reviews during your new client onboarding process. If another professional is setting up the fund, for example, a financial planner, ensure you are kept in the loop of the setup process and ask for copies of the setup documentation and check that they are correctly signed and dated. Confirm with the client who will hold and maintain the super fund and company registers. In your annual client meeting, ask when the last time they reviewed their investment strategy and is their binding death benefit form up to date. It might be worthwhile even including a copy of the latest investment strategy in the SMSF financials package to prompt the client to review it. And as we've already mentioned, Darren, where needed, direct the client to other professionals like a financial planner or lawyer where needed.
Yeah.
Lastly, I'd like to share some common mistakes we find during our onboarding process with accounting firms.
Okay.
So the first point is accepting unsigned and undated documents from the client. So here I'm simply making reference to the SMSF setup documentation that I've already mentioned on the previous slide. The second point is not signing the annual return and or compilation report. So here we find when accounting firms are when we're onboarding the accounting firms with their new clients, they may receive an unsigned financial statements package from the previous accountant or the client, but there is no confirmation that the copy provided is the final copy because they're all unsigned.
Mm-hmm.
This makes it unclear to confirm a definite starting point to get started on the fund. the point is that if it's signed, we know it's final. If it's unsigned, there's no clarification that it is final, because they may be draft.
Okay.
Auditors auditing a fund for the first time also like to see assigned financials and annual return to also confirm their starting point as well. The third common mistake is that there's no signed audit report on file to confirm when the fund was last audited. So new auditors to a fund like to see a signed copy of the last audit report, as mentioned, not only to confirm a starting point, but also to verify if there were any contraventions that they should be aware of before commencing the audit. I'll give you an example. We recently had a situation where an accounting firm engaged a new SMSF client with 2 years outstanding, the 2017 and the 2018 financial years. The client didn't have a copy of the 2016 signed audit report. So the accountant went back to the previous accountant on numerous occasions requesting the document with little success. He also contacted the previous auditor numerous times who was ignoring his calls. The new auditor advised that if the 2016 audit report was not provided to him, he would be forced to report a contravention. So what the accountant did, he went back to the previous accountant for the last time and advised of the situation and that he would be sent an invoice for the extra time spent chasing the audit report, including the auditor's fees. Well, guess what happened? The 2016 audit report was miraculously found and supplied.
Okay.
The situation here is a rare scenario, but what I'm trying to highlight here is that it caused unnecessary anxiety to the client. It caused a prolonged turnaround time. There were delays in lodging the already late returns, and not to mention the time wasted going back and forth for all parties involved. The next point is emailing documents with clients' visible individual tax file numbers. So as accountants and tax agents, we are considered tax file number recipients. Therefore, as a tax file number recipient, emailing documents with clients' TFNs that are visible is a breach of the Privacy Act. There are guidelines for accountants and tax agents on how to disclose an individual's tax file number, how to protect the privacy and security of their TFNs. The guidelines can be sourced by the government authority, the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, and there are also guidelines available from your accounting body regarding this that can be easily accessed. Okay, the next point. Inconsistent processes. An SMSF will generally go through 3 phases during its life cycle: accumulation, pension, and wind up. This process can take several decades to unfold, but during this period, some accounting firms will have had staff of various experiences in SMSFs working on these funds, which can cause inconsistencies in how the fund is approached and how the SIS rules are applied to the fund. The first example is the components that make up a member's balance are inaccurately or not recorded at all. This is particularly the case where general accounting packages are being used in conjunction with Excel spreadsheets. The spreadsheets are used to calculate the allocation of profits between the members. However, the preservation amounts and tax-free and taxable components of a member's balance are often ignored or are misinterpreted in their application. For example, when a member is in accumulation phase, the profits and losses allocation is all taxable. Only when the member moves into pension phase is the profit and loss proportionately allocated between the tax-free and taxable components. The significance of this is that where death benefit payments are made to non-dependents, the tax consequences can prove costly to the non-dependent if the tax-free and taxable components are not accurate. It can also prove difficult to calculate and reconcile after a member has deceased, including sourcing historical data for the period the deceased was a member of the fund. The second inconsistency is that the cost-based details are not kept up to date. Again, where general accounting software packages are being used, the upkeep of cost-based information of SMSF investments are usually recorded in an Excel spreadsheet. In some cases, the dates, the dividend reinvestment plans, mergers or splits details are not kept up to date in the register. This may be due to the changes in staff and unclear work paper procedures for new staff. This also becomes an issue where the investments are sold and there may be insufficient information to calculate the capital gain or loss on the asset. The last point is the lack of documentation to verify the changes that occur in the fund. So, for example, a member started a pension and there are no pension documents to support the change from accumulation to pension. Another example is that there may be a change in trustees and the investment documentation is not up to date to reflect that change, causing confusion and sometimes an administration nightmare if not acted upon promptly. Yep, so we'll go to the recommendations. I'm just going to have a sip of water. Okay, so to summarise my recommendations for you, check new clients' SMSF documentation thoroughly during your onboarding process. Sign the annual returns and compilation reports and provide clients with a signed copy. Keep a copy of the signed audit report on file. With the client's personal tax file numbers, treat them with care. I recommend using a secure portal or alternatively, when emailing information with individual tax file numbers, hide the tax file numbers or use a protected password on the email being sent. Utilise an accounting software specific to SMSFs that handles the allocation of members' components correctly and the ongoing record keeping of the cost base of the investments. Where there's been a change in circumstances in the fund, ensure that there is supporting documentation to reflect that change. I think most of these mishaps occur due to the accountant's lack of available time and resources. So if any of these points stand out for you, it may be worthwhile reviewing and updating your current internal systems and processes. Implement internal and client checklists to strengthen your processes and source the relevant professionals to support your business and your clients. Next, thanks. Okay. So as mentioned earlier, we also have trustees of SMSFs as clients, and when they visit us for the first time, we find that they sometimes lack the knowledge of running an SMSF and are overwhelmed and disorganised. So what we do is we take the time to educate them, get them organised, and most importantly, ensure that they are compliant. So as you can see on the slide, the before is that, the client's disorganised, the documents are quite messy, and then after coming on board, we get them organised and I wouldn't say colour-coded, but organised. So keeping that in mind, where accounting firms outsource their client work to us, we treat their client work in the same manner and level of care. So there is also continual support available to the accountants to ensure their clients can sleep at night with peace of mind, and the accountants can do the same. So to summarise, review the pain points you need to ease. Determine if you outsource, will your pain ease, and what benefits will you actually gain? Ask the right questions and be willing to delegate with a level of control and peace of mind you are comfortable with.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that, Kerrie. I suppose, thank you very much for that presentation. I suppose that what you've gone through today, hopefully it's clarified some issues or concerns that the attendees on the webinar today have been encountering or been thinking about. What we'll do now, we'll just go through a couple of questions that have come through. One of the questions here I've got, Kerrie, is as far as the engagement letter is concerned by the accountant to the client. I know you guys don't necessarily get involved with that. From your experience, as far as the engagement letter is concerned to the from the accountant to the client, what should it disclose ideally?
Well, it should disclose. Well, there's quite a number of things other than what work is involved. They can disclose the fees. They need to disclose that they're following the privacy rules. They need to disclose who are the third parties that they are dealing with.
So concise for this particular example.
Yeah, so they don't necessarily need to list the names of the professionals that they are dealing with. So, for example, with an accounting firm, they might deal with tax professionals as a go-to source for tax advice, specialised tax advice, or they might, seek advice from an auditor, a financial planner. So there's a range of different businesses that they can seek as seek to obtain advice from a third party. So they don't necessarily need to list the names, but they do need to list that they are dealing with third parties,
yeah.
And that the client is giving permission for that third party.
Okay.
They also need to disclose that if they are offshoring, that does need to be clear. And so it would be a good idea if they haven't updated their engagement letters recently, to go to the accounting body that they deal with and have a review of the updated engagement letters, terms and conditions, so they are keeping up to date with that.
Keep the questions coming through, everyone. Some of these questions are really good. But another one here is, under this system, how does a member request that their accumulation or TRIS be converted to an ABP? Who talks to who?
Okay, so here they're talking about when a member is in accumulation stage and wanting to convert to an account-based pension. Here I'd actually probably make it clear that if you're not licensed to give SMSF advice regarding pensions, then the member should be referred to their financial planner if they already have one, or if they don't have one, to the firm's preferred financial planner, so they can work together. There is too much risk nowadays in getting things wrong, and accountants potentially giving advice that they're not licensed to give, and also where they don't have that expertise to give that advice. So also, if a client is coming to you and saying, look, I want to start a pension, the other things to consider is that are they in a position to actually start that pension? So they might be able to start it because they have met a condition of release, but there might be other factors that they need to take into consideration to and ascertain as to when would be a good time for them to start their pension. And that's where getting a financial planner involved would be a good idea. And I know we have a few financial planners listening today, so I'm sure they're on the same page with what I'm answering here.
Absolutely.
Also, I'd like to mention that the guidelines regarding the privacy rules for tax agents and accountants.
Yep.
That if any listeners would like a copy of that, will be more than willing to provide that copy if they send through the request through your inquiries email.
Okay, yeah. So if you do want a copy of the document, please email inquiries@yourbusinessfirst.com.au. I'll have it up on the screen shortly. And there's another one that's come in, Kerrie, that came in during the registration process. The rule on segregation versus non-segregation, definitive status.
Yeah, so what we've decided to do with this question, so thank you to the listener that has posed that question, and they did send that through during the registration process. What we've decided to do with that question, because it is quite specific and broad in the sense of the answer that we can provide, we're actually putting together a documented piece on the rules of the segregation versus the non-segregation, and we'll be able to email that document to you by the end of the week. So thank you for sending through that question, and we'll be in touch by the end of the week.
Okay, thanks for that. Should the SMSF service provider have client contact?
I don't believe that they need to, and I think that's why it's really important to get clear what the terms of the agreement are, and where the responsibility lies in regards to communicating with the client. So generally the way we work is that we don't have client contact. We are for accounting firms, we do provide that clear outsource service. So it is labelled under the banner of the accounting firm. So if there are queries or questions that need to be asked or documentation that need to come from the client, generally what should happen with all service providers and with what we do, we'll email the accountant with the queries. Now, 9 times out of 10, the accountant knows the answer anyway, or has the information on file.
Yeah.
And then they can, if they don't, they can direct the question to the accountant, to the client, and then the client can come back to the accountant, to the service provider.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Some other questions that come across more on that privacy basis, Kerrie, but all in all, as far as from a privacy point of view and also setting up a portal, who should be setting up that portal? Should it be the accounting firm or the SMS service provider? What are your thoughts about that? And how do you work? And probably as an extension there, how do you work with accounting firms from a portal point of view?
Okay, so we do have a secure portal, and we do recommend that all our clients use the portal. It is a safer way to send through sensitive information, including large files as well, but most importantly for sensitive information. I think all accounting firms, regardless on your size and what type of business that you do provide, should have a secure client portal, because we are dealing with sensitive information for clients. We are dealing with tax file numbers, we're dealing with personal information of date of births, addresses, bank details. So, it's just getting increasingly tough out there in making sure that things are secure. So using a secure portal, is the safest and, easiest option.
Okay. You may have touched this on early in some way early on before, but should the accounting firm get the SMSF service provider to sign something like an NDA or confidentiality agreement or anything like that?
Yes, if they want to provide that, but I believe it should actually come from the service provider.
Okay.
So from the service provider's point of view, and that's where I was mentioning earlier, what are the terms of the agreement? The terms of agreement should really spell out, who's doing what, who's talking to who, where the responsibility options lie, and and cover the privacy and confidentiality agreement between both parties. So it really is a business agreement between the accounting firm and the service provider.
Yeah, fair enough. I've got a couple more questions here too, Kerrie. As far as the audit report's concerned, who should organise that?
The audit report is prepared by the auditor. Yeah. The way we work is that we work in conjunction with the auditor, so the accountant doesn't have to get involved in the audit process. So once the once the financials have been approved by the accountant to go to audit, we'll send them off to the auditor. They'll get reviewed by the auditor, and the auditor will then provide the audit report.
Yeah.
And then we'll send back a copy of the complete package to the accounting firm, with the final package and the audit report.
Who should appoint the auditor? Should it be the accountant, or can it be the SMSF service provider?
Appointing it to do the work?
To do the audit work, yeah.
To do the audit work. It can be either. Well, from our perspective, it can be either. Some service providers have their own preferred auditor and it's non-negotiable, but we are quite flexible. So we work with, we have a preferred auditor, but if the accounting firm has a great relationship with an auditor, we're happy to work with them as well.
Great. Okay. Here's one that's come through, Kerrie. What do you say to those partners or owners of accounting firms that by the time I explain, educate, train the outsourcing team, I might as well do it myself?
What do you mean by that? Sorry.
Well, as far as your question is concerned, is that some from my experience as well, I can relate to this.
Oh, when you're dealing with accounting firms?
Yeah. And by the time they outsource, when they want to talk to outsourcing people, or we recommend that they talk to outsourcing people, that they say, look, I've got to train them up, I've got to educate, so I might as well do it myself rather than train them up, etc.
Is that training up the service provider?
Yeah.
Well, that means that they're not an expert in the area, and they don't have, I don't think they're the right provider.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so they really need, if that's the case, then they haven't picked the right business or service provider to support them. Great. So they really need to be an expert in the area.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for your time today, Kerrie. I hope what Kerrie's presented to everybody today has clarified or answered some of the queries that you may have. So as far as the office today and the court and the action, there's two offers today that Kerrie and Fab have provided to the attendees. One is arrange an obligation meet and greet with Kerrie and Fab to explore the outsourcing SMSF administration compliance and get to know them more and how they work well more. And if there's any queries that you may have, that you can ask them directly. And also request a copy of the white paper that they've created called the 13 Questions to Ask Your Prospective SMSF Service Provider. As usual, there's a 3-step process when, as far as these webinars are concerned. And again, from a privacy and confidentiality point of view, if there's anything, if you want to take up these offers, please email your details to inquiries@yourbusinessfirst.com.au. And I'll forward that on to Kerrie and Fab, in which I'll contact you to book a time, and they'll also provide you with the white paper as well. But more importantly, get to know Kerrie and Fab, and get to know Concise Super, and see how they can help you. Have your list of questions ready, and have the meeting with them, and just determine if working with Concise Super will be right for you. Kerrie, I've got one more question that's come through. Do you have time to go through that?
Yeah.
No.
Just
a compliment. Oh, thank you very much for that. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Ariana.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time today, everybody. As I mentioned before, I hope you've taken some thought out of it. Appreciate your time. Looking forward to our next webinar coming up in the Accountants Connection webinar series. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for registering. I will be in contact with all the registrants over the next couple of days just to get some feedback, and obviously they can take it further with Concise Super. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks again, Kerrie.